Composers are film killers. Well, not all the time, but we have a huge amount of potential to either kill or make a film with the music that we write. And this video is all about finding the right composer for your film, the composer that's not going to kill your film, and the composer that's going to elevate your film to something beyond what just the script and the visuals can actually achieve. Hi there, I'm Andrew, and I'm a media composer, and I write music for music libraries. I've had my music on a huge number of TV shows all around the world, and I also write music for film and video games. And in this video, I'm going to show you 4 really important core strategies to make sure that you get the right composer for your film, the composer that's really going to elevate your film. It's said that the composer is the last actor. We're brought in right at the end of the project, usually with a really tight time constraints, and we have the power. We have a frightening amount of power, with just very subtle means of sound to intimate what's going on in the film. So here's what you need to do to make sure that you get the right composer for your film project. The first thing to do is to start looking early. Now, this is really obvious, but vitally important. It's, I think, probably quite easy to maybe put a temp track to your film, to have your musical ideas, but get absolutely totally wrapped up in the production process. And then sort of as you're coming towards getting wrapped up in the editing process, as we all know, and then towards the end of that, particularly on low budget films or student films or films that aren't going to be commercially released, to really rush looking for a composer at the end. And that A, doesn't give you a lot of time to find the right person, and B, probably doesn't give your composer the time to really do justice to your film. So the second really important thing is to actually get a composer on board, to find a composer. This is the nuts and bolts of it. How do you actually find composers to connect with? Well, if you are online and you've got any sort of social media presence or any of your work online previously, you might find that composers are already contacting you. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of us out there, all wanting to desperately connect with directors and producers and filmmakers and be part of the creative process. That doesn't mean that that's the best way to find a composer. But if you are receiving regular emails and regular contacts from composers, it might be that actually somebody in that pool is right. But my advice would be to look at the people who are really making the effort to make a genuine connection with you. It's fairly easy to spot a so-called spam email. So, you know, somebody that's obviously just getting in touch with anybody and everybody, but somebody who's researched your work, talks specifically about aspects of your film, but really connects with you on a personal level and has made the time and energy, put in the time and energy and made the time and effort to really hone in on you as an individual, may well be worth following up. If you're not getting that, well, by all means, start looking through show reels and submissions of people that are getting in touch with you. And in a few minutes, I'll go through some sort of things to look out for in that sort of aspect. The other possibly not great way that a number of people do try to find composers is by advertising on Craigslist, advertising on Facebook. In Facebook posts, you do see fairly frequently film directors and filmmakers, composers needed, and they are rapidly followed by hundreds and hundreds of, very often one line, I've DM'd you, how about me, check out my showreel type thing. That's not to say that composers that are doing that aren't worthy and are not doing the right thing, but you will probably be inundated. And again, I think the same thing applies. You will probably get hundreds, possibly, of applications from people who will quickly just send over their show reel. And again, I would be looking for the composer that really tries to make an individual connection with you and really does their research. The other thing, probably really importantly, and getting to more useful ways of finding a composer, is to look at other projects that you've been interested in, other films, things similar to you in your research, where the music has stuck out to you. Who's been the composer? Can you reach out to them? However, absolutely number one, the most potent way and the most reliable way of finding the right composer for you, I think, is through word of mouth. There are so many variables in approaching somebody from cold. It's a very, very different ball game, showing somebody your show reel and hearing their music on their website, where they're showing off their best, to actually being involved in working with them and getting them to create music that actually really, really fits with your film. And you only really know if that process is going to work once you've done it. So if you have somebody that you can get through word of mouth, you can get some names through word of mouth, that would be my absolute total 100% recommendation that you do that if possible. Okay, thirdly then, so you've got a list of composers to search through. What do you do in the first instance of your research? Well, obviously the thing to do is to listen to their show reel, look at their website, see how they present themselves. This is all obvious stuff. However, what isn't so obvious is to say that it's relatively easy to show 10 or 15 or even 20 really good tracks on your website. That will be a given. All composers should be able to write good music and show good music on their website. We need to look a little bit deeper and dig a little bit further into this though. So is the music on the website all of one genre? Now, that might not be a problem. It might be that you are really clear on the type of sound and genre that you want, and the composer that you are looking at clearly can write in that genre, and they're just writing that one genre. But that would mean that if you employed them on your film, you're probably going to get that genre, and they may not be able to do something else. See if the composer maybe has a bit of a variety of style and approach. That would probably indicate that they're more likely to be flexible, more likely to come up with some sort of innovative ideas about how to create the music for your project. And you might get something more individual or something that you're not expecting that surprises you in a good way. The other thing to think about is, can the composer actually be innovative? Can they do something different? Are you hearing really good music that just sounds like temp music, or really good music that probably sounds like other people's music? Does the composer have their own sort of voice or style? Do you get the sense that they can innovate? You really don't want somebody that's just going to copy the style of any temp tracks that you use. Do you emotionally connect with the sounds that you're hearing? Now, that's a really difficult one to answer, and that might be totally separate from what the music sounds like style-wise, because it might be that the style isn't right for your film, but you have a real sense of emotional connection with the music that you're hearing that might translate into your film really, really well. So that sort of deep, real sort of synchronicity that you might feel with a composer, is that potentially there in what you're listening to? Just going back a little bit, I did forget to say that another really, really good place to meet would be composers for projects is at film festivals and screenings and meetups and things like that. Again, I think because you get a face-to-face contact and you get a real sense of the person. And also, actually, if somebody is at a film festival, if it's a particularly niche film festival, if it's a documentary film festival, for example, the chances are you're both going to be singing off the same hymn sheet, and you may have a good connection. Next, how to interview your potential composers. Now, this is a really difficult one to go through, or a really difficult one to say, because everybody will have a sort of different approach of doing this. But really clearly, it's vitally important that you do talk to the composer in person. And of course, you could do that online. You could do it via Zoom or whatever, but in person is better. And you're trying to ascertain a huge number of things here. First thing is that do you have a chemistry? Can you talk to the person? Do you feel that they are on your level? Do you feel that they have an enthusiasm for your project? Do they understand your project? Do they seem excited about working with you? It's also really, really important that the composer has a sort of sense of anticipation and is coming up with ideas. You would expect a primary conversation whereby the composer is saying, okay, well, what about if we did this, or could we do this? Had you thought about doing this? Do you get the sense that the composer can be innovative? Do you get the sense that they're the sort of person that you could work alongside with? There's no reason at all why you couldn't ask a couple of shortlisted composers to score a very short scene from the film, and it doesn't even have to be finished music to a certain extent, but just to give you a draft, to give you an idea of what they might produce? Are you on the same sort of wavelength? And actually, a composer that's really keen to work with you will happily do that. They would jump through that hoop, I think, and I think that's a reasonable thing to be asked to do. Advertising jobs that we get asked to pitch for all the time. Pitching is a common sort of aspect of various aspects of a composer's job. So I think if you are really stuck and you really want to hone down on getting the best person, then actually asking them to score a brief section of the film and keep it brief and give them a reasonable timescale is a very reasonable thing to do. The other thing to consider is their communication skills. Now, this is vitally important apart from their musical skills, because you will go through a period of time where you are in almost constant communication. First of all, do you feel that they understand what you are saying about the film? Are they translating what you are saying in words into sort of musical concepts? Do you feel that you can talk? Do you feel that the composer's ego isn't going to get in the way and they will be flexible to your ideas? It might be that they are a fabulous composer, but they will see how the music goes in a film, and that will be it. Whether you like it or not to a certain extent. And this is a really big issue for a lot of composers, myself included, I think, is getting to a stage where you completely and utterly are in a headspace where your music is subservient to the film, is serving the film. The music itself isn't of importance. It doesn't matter how clever your music is or how impressive your musical technique is. It needs to be something that serves the film and allows the film to breathe and to grow and isn't really noticed to a certain extent by the audience. Is your composer, do you think, of that type? Do they seem eager to serve? Are they a composer without ego that will serve you and will serve your film, or are they there to serve themselves, do you think? And also the nitty-gritty, the actual real communication. Are they quick to get back to you by email or WhatsApp or whatever you're doing? Do you like the way they communicate? Can you get hold of them quickly and easily, or are you waiting 2 or 3 days in between communications, which is really going to slow you down? Does your composer have a time window that they can work in? Do you know how long it's going to take them to do what you need them to do, and are you able to be in constant communication during that time? Finally, you need to close the deal, and there's a number of really important points here to avoid all sorts of confusion. You need very clear expectations, and even for low budget filmmaking, I would suggest that you have some sort of informal contract in place, even if it's a written email of expectations. So the first thing that you need to be very clear of is the time expectations. How long is there from essentially the locked picture to when you want the music delivered, bearing in mind that you will need to have sound design done before music, really. So you need locked picture, sound design, then the composer to work. You need a really clear time scale, and a good composer will be able to give you a realistic indication of how long it will take them to write the music, and also will be able to stick to that. Feeding into that is that you need to have a very clear agreement as to how much music there will be. So you will no doubt do a spotting session with the composer to work out exactly where the music will be, what its scope will be, what its purpose will be in each scene, where there will be music and where there won't be music. How much are you expecting? The quantity of music in terms of length and the quantity of music in terms of the amount of instrumentation will have a really big, strong bearing on how long it takes the composer to create the final score. If you are wanting just very simple 2 or 3 instruments, it will be very quick. If it's just a piano score, it will be relatively quick. If you're wanting an orchestral score with live recorded instruments, it will take much longer. It's also important to have really clear expectations of what revisions will be expected. Certainly at the beginning of the process, we would expect as composers there to be a number of revisions until we get the sort of sound and the vibe absolutely right. As we go on through the score, we tend to sort of nail it a little bit more accurately each time, and there tends to be less revisions as we go on. But how many revisions is it reasonable to expect your composer to do, given the time constraints and any budgetary constraints that you're putting in place? It's really important to be clear on that from the very beginning. Which obviously brings us on to the obvious one, which is budgeting. How much money is there available? Is there any money available? How much will the composer be paid? Will he or she be paid by the minute? Will they be paid for the whole project? When will they be paid? And also going on into the future, what will the rights of the composer be in terms of redistributing the music? Is it for the copyright? Is it for the composer to be able to literally distribute and resell the music or reuse the music? Is it just to be used for that film only and for the composer not to use it again in the future? These things need to be really, really, really clearly set out at the beginning. So I hope that's been really useful. So the main things are to allow plenty of time, look very carefully in terms of actually finding a short list of composers, and then think really carefully about the things that we talked about in terms of looking at their music and thinking about what their skills and strengths and weaknesses are. It's really important then to do an interview process, however you want to do that, and possibly ask them to do a little bit of scoring specifically for your film. And really, really important to set out really clear expectations at the beginning so that everybody knows where they stand. And then hopefully your composer will elevate your film and not kill it. Well, thank you for listening this far into the video. I hope it's been really useful and enlightening in some aspects. I will put a link here to my latest video, or it might go here. Have a click on that and see what you can find in that as well. Until the next one then, thanks. Bye-bye.